The gift sat wrapped in silver paper on my lap, heavier than it should have been for its size. Around me, my wife's family laughed and passed presents in a circle, each box carefully labeled with someone's name. Everyone's name except mine. Patricia, my mother-in-law, caught my eye from across the living room and smiled that smile I'd learned to recognize over 8 years of marriage. The one that said she'd won another small victory in our ongoing war. "Oh, you didn't get one?" she asked, loud enough that the conversation stopped. Her voice dripped with false concern, the kind that made everyone uncomfortable but nobody willing to call out. "I must have miscounted when I was shopping. You know how it is, so many people to remember." The room went quiet for just a moment. My wife Amanda shifted beside me on the couch, her hand finding mine under the Afghan blanket. Her brothers, Tyler and Jason, suddenly found their phones fascinating. Even Amanda's father, Robert, who usually tried to smooth over Patricia's barbs, just took a long drink from his Scotch glass. "That's okay," I said, my voice steady and calm. I'd practiced this moment in my head for 3 weeks, ever since I'd discovered what Patricia had been hiding. "I understand completely. Actually, I brought something for you, Patricia. A special gift, just between family." I stood up, holding the silver-wrapped box, and walked across the Persian rug that Patricia loved to mention cost more than most people's cars. The room felt smaller suddenly, all eyes on me as I extended the package toward my mother-in-law. Patricia's smile faltered for just a second. Something flickered behind her eyes, uncertainty maybe, or the first whisper of fear. But she recovered quickly, taking the box with a gracious nod. "How thoughtful, Nathan," she said, using my full name like she always did when she wanted to emphasize that I wasn't quite family enough for nicknames. "Should I open it now or save it for later?" "Oh, definitely now," I replied, settling back onto the couch next to Amanda. "I think everyone will want to see this." The laughter that had filled the room earlier was gone, replaced by that peculiar tension that comes when people sense drama but can't quite identify its source. Patricia carefully peeled back the silver paper, her manicured nails working at the tape with practiced precision. Inside was a manila folder. Nothing fancy, nothing wrapped in tissue paper or tied with ribbons. Just a simple folder with documents inside. Patricia opened it, and I watched the color drain from her face like water down a sink. Her hands started trembling, just slightly, enough that the papers rustled in her grip. "What is this?" she whispered, but I could tell she knew exactly what it was. "Why don't you read it out loud, Patricia?" I suggested. "Share it with the family. After all, we're all here together. No secrets between us, right?" But before we get to what happened next, let me tell you how I got to this moment. How I discovered that my mother-in-law, the woman who'd spent 8 years treating me like an uninvited guest at her daughter's life, had been hiding something that would tear her perfect family image apart. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more about family secrets, betrayals, and the moment when everything comes to light, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below about your own experiences with difficult in-laws, and give this video a thumbs up so more people can find these stories. Now, let's continue. My name is Nathan Rivers. I'm 34 years old and I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment firm in downtown Seattle. It's steady work, pays well enough to keep Amanda and me comfortable in our townhouse in Ballard, though apparently not well enough to impress my mother-in-law. Patricia Caldwell, or as she preferred when introducing herself at country club events, Patricia Hastings Caldwell, had made it clear from day one that I wasn't her ideal choice for her only daughter. Amanda had been dating a cardiac surgeon named Eric when we met at a mutual friend's wedding reception. Eric drove a BMW, had a vacation home in Whistler, and came from what Patricia called good stock, which I learned meant old Seattle money and connections that mattered at fundraising galas. I drove a Honda Civic, rented an apartment with 2 roommates, and my family consisted of a high school teacher mother and a father who'd run a successful but unglamorous plumbing business before retiring. We were comfortable, middle class, and thoroughly unimpressive by Patricia's standards. But Amanda didn't care about any of that. She was a kindergarten teacher who loved her job despite the modest salary, who preferred hiking in the Cascades to spa weekends, and who'd broken up with Eric because, as she told me on our 3rd date, he was more interested in impressing my mother than getting to know me. We now got married at a small ceremony in Discovery Park. Patricia spent the entire reception telling anyone who'd listen that she'd offered to pay for a proper wedding at the yacht club. But Amanda had insisted on something quaint. The way she said quaint made it sound like a disease. Over the next 8 years, Patricia perfected the art of subtle dismissal. She'd ask about my job in that tone that suggested she was being polite by even remembering I had one. She'd tell stories at family dinners about Amanda's life before me, always managing to mention Eric and his accomplishments. When we announced we were trying for a baby, she'd suggested we wait until we were more financially established, which everyone understood meant until I made more money. But the real pattern I noticed was in the details. The forgotten birthday cards that everyone else in the family received. The family photos on her mantle where I'd been cropped out or positioned at the edge. The Christmas gifts that were always practical and impersonal. A tie, a coffee mug, once a set of car floor mats, while her sons and even their wives received thoughtful, expensive presents. Amanda saw it too, but she'd learned long ago that confronting her mother about anything resulted in tears, accusations of ungratefulness, and weeks of cold shoulder treatment. It was easier to let the small slights slide, to pretend that being treated like a second-class family member was just Patricia's personality quirk. Then came the Harris account. 3 months before that Christmas gathering, I was assigned to review the financial portfolio of a new client. Standard procedure for our firm, we analyze assets, look for tax optimization opportunities, ensure everything's structured properly. The client's name was listed as Robert Caldwell, my father-in-law. I should have recused myself immediately, should have passed the file to another analyst, but something made me pause when I saw Patricia's name listed as co-owner on several accounts. The numbers didn't make sense. Robert was a retired commercial real estate developer, successful but not extraordinarily wealthy. Their lifestyle reflected comfortable affluence, the nice house in Magnolia, the club memberships, the European vacations. But the investment accounts showed deposits that seemed excessive for their known income sources. Then I found the trust fund, a private trust established in 1998, funded by Patricia's maiden name, Hastings. Inside were stocks, bonds, and real estate holdings worth approximately $4.3 million. I sat in my office staring at those numbers for a long time. Patricia's family had money, I'd known that. But she'd spent years suggesting that she and Robert were careful with their finances, that they couldn't help us more with things like our down payment because their money was tied up in retirement investments. When Amanda and I had struggled to cover the cost of IVF treatments last year, Patricia had offered to loan us $10,000 at 4% interest, making sure to mention how tight money was for them lately with the market being uncertain. She had over $4 million sitting in accounts that generated more in annual returns than I made in salary. But that wasn't the revelation that made me start digging deeper. It was the LLC I found buried in the trust documents. Hastings Properties Group, LLC, established in 2003 with Patricia listed as the managing member. I pulled the business records. Hastings Properties Group owned 4 rental properties in the Seattle area, each generating significant monthly income. The properties had been purchased using trust funds, renovated, and converted into high-end rentals. The business was turning a profit of roughly $180,000 annually after expenses. None of this was illegal. Patricia had every right to manage her family money however she chose. But the picture it painted was damning. For 8 years, she'd watched Amanda and me struggle with student loans, with saving for a house, with the costs of fertility treatments. She'd positioned herself as sympathetic but financially unable to help more than token amounts, all while sitting on millions in liquid assets and collecting rent from properties her family money had purchased. I started pulling more records, using the access my firm had to property databases and business filings. That's when I found the beach house, Patricia and Robert's timeshare in Cannon Beach that they visited several times a year. It wasn't a timeshare. It was a fully owned, mortgage-free property worth an estimated $850,000, held in the name of Hastings Properties Group. They'd been telling the family for years that they rented it for a week here and there, splitting costs with another family to make it affordable. They owned it, had owned it since 2005. The property taxes alone were more than Amanda and I had been able to save in our down payment fund. Then came the investment in Tyler's business. Patricia's older son had started a craft brewery 3 years ago. The family had been told that Patricia and Robert invested $50,000 as silent partners, helping Tyler get started but expecting to be paid back eventually. The LLC documents told a different story. Patricia had invested $300,000, owned 40% of the business, and was collecting quarterly distributions that had already returned her initial investment plus profits. Jason, the younger son, had gotten similar treatment when he'd wanted to start a law practice. Patricia had funded the entire startup cost, roughly $200,000, while telling the family she'd co-signed a bank loan to help him get established. The pattern was clear. Patricia had been secretly bankrolling her son's success while letting Amanda believe that family money was scarce and had to be carefully rationed. Every time we'd needed help, every time we'd struggled, Patricia had the means to assist, but chose to watch us fail instead. Or rather, chose to watch me fail, because I was starting to understand that this wasn't about Amanda, it was about me. Patricia wanted her daughter to see that she'd married poorly, that choosing love over status had consequences, that Eric, the cardiac surgeon, would have provided the life Amanda deserved. By making sure we struggled while her sons thrived, Patricia was writing a narrative. The narrative said that Amanda had made a mistake, that I wasn't capable of providing for her family, that she should have listened to her mother's wisdom. I spent 3 weeks verifying every detail, cross-referencing documents, making sure I understood the complete picture. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Not just at Patricia's deception, but at the years of quiet manipulation, the way she'd used money as a tool to prove her point about my inadequacy. The Christmas gathering was scheduled for December 23rd, the Caldwell family tradition. Patricia always hosted, turning her home into a showcase of holiday perfection. This year, she'd mentioned several times how excited she was to have everyone together, how she'd found wonderful gifts for all her favorite people. When I'd asked Amanda if we should bring anything, she'd laughed. "Mom has everything planned down to the minute. Just bring yourself and prepare for the usual chaos." I prepared differently than Amanda expected. The day before the party, I compiled everything I'd found into a single folder. Property records, trust documents, LLC filings, tax returns that were public record, everything that painted the picture of Patricia's secret wealth and her selective generosity. I made 2 copies, one for the silver-wrapped box and one for my briefcase as backup. I also drafted a letter, professional and measured, laying out what I'd discovered and what it meant for our family relationship going forward. The letter made it clear that I wasn't asking for money, that I didn't want handouts or expect Patricia to fund our life. But I demanded honesty. I demanded that she stop pretending to care about our struggles while actively choosing not to help when she easily could. Most importantly, I demanded that she stop using her money to manipulate the family narrative, to make her sons look successful, while setting Amanda up to resent her choice of husband. The morning of December 23rd, Amanda noticed I was quiet as we drove to her parents' house. "You okay?" she asked, reaching for my hand. "I know Mom can be difficult, but it's just one evening. We'll get through it like always." "I'm fine," I said, squeezing her hand back. "Actually, I think this Christmas might be different." She smiled, thinking I meant we'd finally learned to let Patricia's comments roll off our backs. She had no idea what I was about to do. The party started exactly how Patricia wanted it. The house was decorated like a magazine shoot, the food was catered from that expensive French place downtown, and Patricia held court in the living room wearing an outfit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Tyler and his wife Emma arrived with their twin boys. Jason came with his girlfriend Stephanie, a paralegal from his firm. Everyone gathered around the towering Christmas tree, drinks in hand, making small talk about their years and their plans. Patricia orchestrated the gift exchange like a conductor leading an orchestra. She'd arranged presents under the tree in a specific order, each person receiving thoughtful, expensive gifts that she'd clearly spent weeks selecting. Tyler got a vintage wine collection. Jason received a set of first-edition law books he'd been wanting. Even their partners received luxury items, designer handbags, cashmere scarves, jewelry that sparkled in the twinkling lights. Amanda opened her gift, an expensive kitchen appliance she'd mentioned wanting once in passing 6 months ago. She was genuinely touched, hugging her mother and thanking her. Then came my turn, except there was no gift with my name on it. Patricia looked around the tree with exaggerated confusion, checking tags, moving boxes, making a show of searching for a present that didn't exist. "Oh, you didn't get one?" The words came out with perfect pitch, concerned but not apologetic. The implication was clear. She'd simply forgotten, An honest mistake. Certainly nothing personal. The room went quiet. This wasn't the first time Patricia had forgotten something involving me, but it was the most public, the most deliberate. Amanda's face flushed red, embarrassment for me, anger at her mother. Robert suddenly needed to refill his drink. Tyler and Jason found their phones absolutely fascinating. That's when I reached for the silver-wrapped box I'd kept beside me all evening. As Patricia's trembling hands held those documents, as her perfect hostess facade began to crack, I felt something shift in the room. The balance of power that had always tilted toward Patricia was suddenly unstable. "These are private financial documents," Patricia said, her voice shaking slightly. "How did you had no right to access these." "Actually," I said calmly, "as the analyst reviewing your husband's portfolio, I had every right to access anything filed as public record. The property holdings, the LLC registrations, the business partnerships, they're all documented with the state. Nothing I found was private, Patricia. You just assumed no one would bother looking." Robert set down his drink. "What documents? What's going on here?" I stood up, moving to stand beside Patricia so I could see the papers she was holding. "Why don't you explain to your family about the Hastings Trust, Patricia? The $4 million you've had sitting in investment accounts while telling us all that money was tight?" The room erupted in confused voices, but I continued, my tone conversational, like I was discussing the weather. "Or maybe you'd like to explain about Hastings Properties. Group? The rental properties generating $180,000 a year in profit? The beach house in Cannon Beach that you told everyone was a timeshare?" Amanda was staring at her mother with dawning comprehension. "Mom, what is he talking about?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I took the folder from her hands, removing several specific documents. "Here's the really interesting part," I said, holding up the LLC documents. "When Tyler started his brewery, Patricia told us she invested $50,000 as a silent partner. The actual amount was $300,000, and she owns 40% of the business. Tyler, did you know your mother has already made back her entire investment plus an additional $80,000 in distributions?" Tyler's face went white. "That's not— Mom said she was just helping me get started. She said it was a loan I'd pay back eventually." "Not according to these documents," I replied. "You're paying her back in quarterly profits. Quite successfully, I might add. Your brewery is doing very well." I pulled out another set of papers. "Jason, your law practice startup cost was funded entirely by your mother to the tune of $200,000. Not a co-signed bank loan, as she told the family. A direct investment that she's been collecting returns on for 3 years now." Jason looked at his mother with confusion. "You told me the bank approved the loan based on your co-signing. You said you weren't actually putting up any money." "She lied," I said simply. "To both of you. To the whole family. Patricia has been playing a very careful game. She wanted her sons to succeed, to look successful, to be the pride of the family. But she needed Amanda to see what happens when you choose poorly, when you marry someone without the right pedigree or income potential." Amanda stood up, her voice shaking. "Nathan, I don't understand. What are you saying?" I turned to my wife, the woman I'd loved for 8 years, who'd stood by me through every one of her mother's subtle insults. "Last year, when we were trying to afford IVF treatments, your mother offered us a $10,000 loan at 4% interest. Do you remember what she said?" Amanda nodded slowly. "She said money was tight with their retirement investments, but she wanted to help however she could." "Your mother has over $4 million in liquid assets," I said. "The annual returns on her trust fund alone are more than I make in salary. When we were scraping together money for fertility treatments, struggling to pay for medications and procedures, your mother was collecting rent from 4 properties and receiving quarterly distributions from both your brother's businesses." I watched understanding bloom across Amanda's face, followed immediately by hurt and anger. "Why?" Amanda asked, turning to her mother. "Why would you let us struggle like that? Why would you watch us drain our savings, take on debt, stress about every dollar, when you had the means to help?" Patricia finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. My financial arrangements are my own business. I don't owe explanations about how I choose to manage my family's money." "You're right," I agreed. "You don't owe us explanations about your money, but you do owe us an explanation for 8 years of lies. For pretending you couldn't help when you chose not to. For funding your son's dreams while watching your daughter's husband fail. Because that's what you wanted, wasn't it, Patricia? You wanted me to fail. You wanted Amanda to regret choosing me over Eric, the cardiac surgeon with the right connections. Robert was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Patricia, is this true? Do you really have $4 million in accounts I don't know about? It's my family money, Patricia said defensively. The Hastings Trust was established by my father. It's meant to preserve our family's legacy, not to bail out every relative who can't manage their finances properly. The insult hung in, the air like smoke. Amanda's face flushed red with anger. Can't manage our finances? Amanda's voice was cold. Nathan and I both work full-time. We've never asked you for handouts. The only times we've needed help were for major life events, like fertility treatments or buying a house. Things you've told us repeatedly that you wanted to help with but couldn't afford. Tyler stood up, his face confused and hurt. Mom, I don't understand. Why did you tell me the brewery investment was $50,000 when it was actually $300,000? Why lie about that? Because I wanted you to feel like you'd accomplished something on your own, Patricia said, her voice rising. I wanted you to have confidence, to believe you could succeed without massive help. But you gave me massive help, Tyler said. You just lied about it. And you let Nathan and Amanda struggle while making sure Jason and I had everything we needed to succeed. Jason set down his drink carefully, like he was afraid it might shatter. The law practice loan, Mom. You told me I got approved because of my credentials and business plan. You said the bank saw my potential. That meant everything to me. It gave me confidence that I was actually good enough to make it. You are good enough, Patricia insisted. That's why I invested in you. No, Jason said quietly. You invested in me to prove a point, to show Amanda that her brothers were successful, that we had our acts together, while her husband couldn't provide properly. The accusation landed like a bomb. Patricia's face flushed red, but she didn't deny it. Amanda was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. All those years, all those times we needed help, and you said you wished you could do more, but money was tight. You were lying. You were watching us struggle on purpose. I wanted you to be independent, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't want to enable poor financial decisions. Bull, I said, my voice cutting, through the room. You gave Tyler $300,000 for a brewery, a business that fails 90% of the time. You gave Jason $200,000 to start a law practice in one of the most competitive markets in the country. But when Amanda needed $30,000 for fertility treatments that would give you the grandchild you claimed to want so badly, you offered a loan with interest and made it sound like you were stretching your budget. I pulled out the final document from the folder. This is the letter I wrote, laying out everything I found and what it means. I'm not asking for money, Patricia. I don't want your investments or your trust fund. But I am demanding honesty, and I'm demanding that you stop manipulating this family with selective generosity. Robert took the letter from my hands, reading it slowly. His face grew darker with each paragraph. When he finished, he looked at his wife with something that might have been discussed. $4 million, Robert said quietly. You've had $4 million in accounts I knew nothing about, and you made me believe we needed to be careful with retirement money. When Amanda needed help, you told me we couldn't afford more than $10,000, and even that had to be structured as a loan. The trust is separate from our marital assets, Patricia said, grasping for legal ground. My father established it specifically for Hastings family wealth preservation. You know this, Robert. We discussed it when we got married. We discussed a trust fund that provided some supplemental income, Robert shot back. Not $4 million, not rental properties and business investments, not enough money to fund both our sons' businesses while letting our daughter struggle. Emma, Tyler's wife, spoke up for the first time. Mrs. Caldwell, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but when Tyler and I needed help with the down payment on our house, you gave us $40,000 as a gift. You told us it was from you and Robert together, that you wanted to invest in your son's future. She looked at Nathan and Amanda. I had no idea you were struggling. I assumed if Tyler got help, Amanda would too. That was the point, I said. Patricia made sure her sons and their families were taken care of, made sure they looked successful, while ensuring that Amanda's choice of husband looked like a mistake by comparison. Patricia was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught, exposed, whose carefully constructed narrative had collapsed. "I wanted the best for my daughter," Patricia said through her tears. "I wanted her to have the life she deserved, the life she could have had with someone like Eric, someone established, someone from the right background." "Someone you approved of," Amanda said coldly. "That's what you mean. Someone who would have made you look good at your country club events." The evening dissolved into chaos after that. Tyler and Jason both confronted their mother about the lies, the manipulation, the way she'd used her money to control the family narrative. Robert retreated to his study, returning with a bottle of scotch and the look of a man who'd just discovered his marriage was built on deception. Emma took Amanda into the kitchen, the two women talking quietly while Amanda cried years of accumulated hurt into her sister-in-law's shoulder. Stephanie, Jason's girlfriend, looked like she wanted to disappear into the expensive furniture. I stood in that living room, surrounded by the wreckage of Christmas perfection, and felt no satisfaction. No triumph in exposing Patricia's secrets. Just exhaustion and a deep sadness for what this family could have been if honesty had been valued more than image. Around midnight, people started leaving. Tyler and Emma gathered their sleeping boys, Tyler hugging me hard on the way out. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I had no idea. I should have seen it." Jason shook my hand, his face serious. "We need to have a family meeting, a real one, without Mom controlling the narrative. Can you and Amanda come to my place next week?" I agreed, watching Patricia's sons walk out of her house with new understanding of how they'd been manipulated, how their mother's generosity had come with invisible strings attached. Robert found me as I was helping Amanda into her coat. "Nathan," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I owe you an apology. Several years' worth of apologies. I knew Patricia could be difficult, but I didn't realize, I never thought she'd let your daughter struggle to prove a point," I finished. "Yeah, neither did I until I found the documents." Robert nodded slowly. "I'll be contacting a lawyer after the holidays. Not for divorce, not yet, but to understand what our actual financial situation is. I can't stay married to someone who'd lie to me for decades about something this fundamental." Amanda and I drove home in silence, both of us processing what had happened. When we finally got to our townhouse, Amanda turned to me in the darkness of our driveway. "Why didn't you tell me what you found?" she asked. "Why wait until tonight to expose everything?" "Because you would have tried to talk to her first," I said. "You would have given her a chance to explain, to justify, to make excuses, and she would have spun it somehow, made it seem like she had good reasons for everything. I needed the truth to come out in front of everyone, so there was no way to spin it, no way to control the narrative." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that turned into crying. I held her while she cried for the mother she'd thought she had, for the family dynamic she'd believed in, for the 8 years we'd struggled while help was available but deliberately withheld. "I should have stood up to her years ago," Amanda said finally. "I should have seen what she was doing to you, to us." "You loved your mother," I replied. "That's not a character flaw, Amanda. You wanted to believe the best of her. We both did. The aftermath of that Christmas took months to settle." Patricia initially tried to rally the family to her defense, sending emails about how she'd been ambushed and humiliated in her own home. But Tyler and Jason, once they understood the scope of their mother's manipulation, stood firm. They demanded honesty about the investments, the real numbers, the actual terms. Robert moved into the beach house that Patricia had claimed was a timeshare. He filed for legal separation in February, citing irreconcilable differences and financial dishonesty. The divorce was finalized by summer, with Robert receiving half of the marital assets, but Patricia keeping her family trust per their prenuptial agreement. Tyler restructured his brewery partnership, buying out his mother's share using a legitimate bank loan. He said he wanted to succeed or fail on his own merits, without his mother's money lurking in the background as a constant reminder of her manipulation. Jason did the same with his law practice, refinancing to remove Patricia from the ownership structure. It meant more debt for both brothers, but also freedom from their mother's invisible strings. As for Amanda and me, we had a lot of conversations about family, about trust, about the ways people can love you while still trying to control you. Amanda went to therapy to process years of maternal manipulation she'd normalized as just Patricia's personality. Patricia herself became smaller somehow. Without her ability to use money as a tool for control, without her perfect family image to maintain, she seemed to shrink. She moved to a condo in Bellevue, joined different clubs, made new friends who didn't know about the scandal that had torn apart her Christmas gathering. She reached out to Amanda several times, emails and letters that apologized for specific actions, but never acknowledged the fundamental betrayal. "I'm sorry I hurt you, but I was only trying to help," became her refrain, as if manipulation could be justified by good intentions. Amanda responded once, a careful letter that laid out boundaries for any future relationship. Honesty, respect, and acceptance that Amanda's life choices were her own to make. Patricia never responded to that letter. The silver-wrapped box that had contained those documents sat on our mantel for months, a reminder of the night everything changed. Eventually, Amanda suggested we throw it away, bury that chapter of our lives and move forward. But I kept the folder, not out of spite or as ammunition for future battles. I kept it as a reminder that sometimes the cruelest wounds come from people who claim to love you. That manipulation wrapped in concern is still manipulation. That wealth used as a weapon can destroy families as effectively as poverty. 6 months after that Christmas, Amanda found out she was pregnant. We'd saved enough to try IVF one more time, this time without any loans or help from family. When she called me at work to tell me the test was positive, I cried at my desk, grateful that our child would grow up in a family where honesty mattered more than image. We didn't tell Patricia about the pregnancy until Amanda was showing. When we finally did, Patricia sent an expensive gift basket with a card that said, "Congratulations on your wonderful news. I hope I can be part of this child's life." Amanda wrote back simply, "We'll see." Tyler and Jason became closer to us after that Christmas. The 3 siblings bonded by understanding that they'd all been pieces in their mother's game. Tyler's boys call me Uncle Nathan now, running to me at family gatherings with the unself-conscious affection of children who don't care about status or income. Robert remarried 2 years after the divorce, a widow named Claire, who'd also escaped a marriage built on deception. At their small ceremony, he pulled me aside and said, "Thank you for having the courage to speak up. I wasted too many years in a relationship that was fundamentally dishonest. You gave me a chance to start over." As for Patricia, she lives her life in Bellevue, occasionally appearing at family events with careful politeness and no acknowledgement of what happened. She's a grandmother now, to Tyler's twins and to our daughter Sophia, but at a distance. She sends birthday gifts and holiday cards, all surface-level gestures that require no real vulnerability or relationship. Sometimes I wonder if she understands what she lost. Not the money or the control, but the chance to have genuine relationships with her children and grandchildren. The opportunity to be part of their lives in meaningful ways instead of as a cautionary tale about what happens when you value image over integrity. The silver-wrapped box taught me something important. People can spend years building elaborate structures of deception, using money and manipulation to control narratives and outcomes. But truth has a way of emerging eventually, often in the moments least expected, most public, most devastating. That Christmas, I'd given Patricia a gift she never wanted, the gift of exposure, of having her carefully constructed lies revealed to the people she'd most wanted to impress. In return, she'd given me something unexpected, validation that I'd been right all along about her treatment, proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling like an outsider in a family that should have welcomed me. Was it cruel to expose her secret so publicly? Maybe. Could I have handled it differently, confronted her privately, given her a chance to come clean on her own terms? Probably. But 8 years of watching my wife doubt herself, watching us struggle while help was deliberately withheld, watching Patricia work to prove that Amanda had made a mistake in choosing me, that burned away any desire for gentle handling. Sometimes the gift someone needs, most is the one they'll hate receiving. For Patricia, that gift was truth, delivered in a silver-wrapped box at the Christmas gathering where she'd planned to remind me, once again, that I didn't quite belong. The laughter stopped when they saw what was inside that box. And in the silence that followed, something shifted. Not just in our family dynamics, but in how Amanda saw her mother, how her brothers understood their success, how Robert recognized the woman he'd been married to for decades. Truth is a gift that keeps on giving, even when the wrapping is torn away and the contents spill out for everyone to see. especially then. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever dealt with family members who use money or status as weapons, drop a comment below. Share your experiences, your moments of standing up, your stories of when the truth finally came out. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, betrayal, and those moments when everything changes, in an instant. Hit that like button if you believe honesty matters more than keeping up appearances. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most valuable gift you can give is one the recipient never wanted to receive.